The invitation to my parents' 40th anniversary celebration sat on my desk, the gold lettering shimmering under the soft lighting. Not in my main office, the penthouse suite at Wilson Ventures, but in the modest consulting room I maintained for appearances with my family. The dinner was happening tonight, and in just under 2 hours, Bloomberg would broadcast my company's latest triumph, an $80 million acquisition of a rising tech firm, one that would significantly enhance our digital assets. Of course, my family had no idea I was the owner of Wilson Ventures. To them, I was just Sophia Mitchell, the daughter who passed on joining the family law business and instead started a minor consulting firm. My phone vibrated. A message from my brother Andrew, 7 p.m. sharp. Try not to look like a failure. Dad's invited the senior partners. I smiled to myself as I adjusted the black dress. I'd chosen a discreet Valentino design with no flashy labels, just how my family liked it. They had no clue that while they were busy building a well-known law empire, I had been quietly constructing a venture capital firm valued at over $500 million. Mitchell family gatherings were always about appearances. Tonight's venue, the entire rooftop floor of the Beacon Hill Club, had been reserved. As the driver pulled up, I spotted Andrew's new Tesla prominently positioned at the front. "Miss Wilson," the driver said quietly, addressing me by my professional identity, taken from my mother's maiden name. "Should I wait here?" "No, James," I said with a grin. "But be ready for some breaking headlines around 9. Inside, the club's grand foyer echoed with familiar chatter. Former classmates, relatives, and law firm partners all gathered to toast the Mitchell legacy. Sophia, my mother's voice floated across the room. Her tone was sweet, but carried the usual undertone of doubt. "We weren't sure if you'd show. Still managing that little business of yours?" I accepted her perfunctory kiss on the cheek, catching the scent of her usual designer fragrance. "Something along those lines, Mom." She gave my arm a light pat. "At least you're doing something. Though if you'd just accepted that offer." "At the firm, Mom," I said softly, "we've already been through this." She sighed, toying with her diamond necklace. "I just worry, that's all. You're 35. Time to think about your future." I thought about the billion-dollar deals waiting on my desk, about the empire I'd assembled, right under their noses. Andrew arrived with a glass of champagne, his new Rolex glinting in the chandelier light. "Still clinging to your little startup dreams, sis?" he teased. "Good to see you too, Andrew," I said, accepting the glass. "How are things going at the firm?" He smirked proudly. "Dad's naming me managing partner next month, youngest in the firm's history." "Impressive," I replied. "You know," he said, leaning in close with that overpowering cologne, "the invitation to join the firm still stands. Junior associate. Of course, you'd have to work your way up, but it's a step up from whatever it is you're doing." I took a sip of the drink, thinking about the announcement that would go live in less than 2 hours. "I'm exactly where I want to be." "Contentment isn't success," came a familiar voice behind me. Turning, I met the gaze of Richard Mitchell, my father, clad in a perfectly tailored suit, gray hair perfectly styled, exuding confidence that often bordered on arrogance. "Hello, Dad. Happy anniversary." He gave a polite nod, his eyes scanning my understated attire with faint disapproval. "You could have worn that Gucci dress I gave you for Christmas." "I prefer this look," he sighed. "That's always been the issue. You've never really matched the Mitchell image." The room was filling up fast. Judges, high-ranking attorneys, influential figures from Boston's legal world all gathered to celebrate my parents' marriage and, more notably, the enduring prestige of Mitchell and Associates. "Richard," a senior partner called out, raising a crystal glass. "Big night. Practically the entire legal circle is here." My father smiled widely. "William, have you met my daughter?" "The lawyer?" William asked. No, my father said, his expression tightening. "That's Andrew. This is Sophia. She runs a small consulting business." William's interest visibly faded. "Ah." He took a sip and leaned toward my father. "By the way, have you caught wind of the Wilson Ventures situation? Word is they're announcing something massive tonight." I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of deal?" "Some big tech acquisition. Sarah Wilson's been making waves, brilliant investor. Nobody knows what she looks like." My dad shrugged. "We do a bit of legal support for them. Minor work. They use Goldman Sachs for the major stuff, which was exactly why I used their firm to keep them at arm's length and far from uncovering my role." Another carefully placed piece in the web I'd built. Andrew jumped in, clearly not wanting the attention to stray. Speaking of deals, wait till you hear about the merger I just sealed, biggest in the firm's history. The conversation, as always, drifted back to Andrew. I glanced at my phone. 1 hour left. My mother clinked her glass gently, calling everyone to be seated for dinner. Mitchell family dinners were always extravagant. This year's was on another level, gleaming chandeliers, a live quartet playing softly, tables brimming with rare wines and artfully plated cuisine. Before the meal began, my father rose and lifted his glass. Thank you all for joining us. 40 years ago, I married the woman of my dreams, and together, we created not just a family but a lasting legacy. Applause spread across the room. And that legacy continues, he said proudly. Our son Andrew, soon to be the youngest, managing partner in our firm's history, is carrying the Mitchell name forward. More applause. Andrew stood up, basking in admiration. And our daughter Sophia, my father added, tone softening slightly, who chose her own path. A heavy silence settled in. She owns a small business, he said, trying to sound respectful but falling short, which is admirable in its own way. I glanced at my phone again. 45 minutes to go. Really, Sophia, my mother whispered, leaning toward me. You could at least act like your father's words mean something to you. Oh, they do, I said, smiling gently. I'm just waiting for something important, a new client. For your boutique consulting business? Andrew smirked from across the table. Something like that. The dinner carried on as it always did, boasting, legal debates, and praise for the Mitchell family legacy. I sat quietly, watching the clock on my phone tick down. You know, Andrew suddenly said loudly enough for others nearby to hear, the salary of a junior associate at the firm probably triples whatever Sophia pulls in annually, probably. I answered lightly, I just hate seeing you waste your talents. You could be part of something real, something that matters. I checked the time, 5 minutes remaining. Actually, I said softly, I already am. Your cozy little workspace in Cambridge? He laughed. That doesn't exactly scream success. No, I replied, smiling. It's far bigger than that. My father, overhearing, stepped in. Sophia, not everyone is built for the demands of high-stakes business. There's nothing wrong with keeping things manageable. I rose slowly, smoothing out the skirt of my dress. If you'll excuse me, I need to step away for a moment. During your father's anniversary celebration? My mother asked with concern. Trust me, I said with a calm smile. You'll want me to take this call. As I walked out of the lavish dining room and into the marble hallway, I caught Andrew's voice behind me. She's just trying to act important. Still clinging to that tiny business of hers. I paused, turned slightly. You might want to tune into CNBC, Andrew. Something interesting is about to hit. The confused look on his face was almost satisfying. The real impact was yet to come. I stood alone in the elegant corridor, eyes locked on my phone screen as the final seconds counted down. And right on cue, notifications began to flood in. Breaking news, Wilson Ventures announces $80 million acquisition of Tech Fusion. Sarah Wilson stuns market again with major tech deal. Venture capital icon expands digital holdings with bold move inside the dining room. I heard the first audible gasp. Someone had pulled out their phone and turned on CNBC. In an unexpected shakeup, Wilson Ventures has purchased Tech Fusion, an artificial intelligence startup, for $80 million. Sarah Wilson, the elusive CEO behind the firm, continues to disrupt the venture capital world. I walked calmly back into the room. Andrew nearly spilled his wine. My father stood frozen, mid-sentence. Several phones lit up across the table, and there I was, my professional headshot shown during the CNBC segment, captioned, Sarah Wilson, CEO of Wilson Ventures, Sophia. My mother gasped, her voice barely audible. What is this? I sat down, lifted my wine glass, and smiled. Just another routine day at the office. Suddenly, the entire room turned chaotic. The same people who had brushed me off earlier were now unable to look away. Judges leaned in. Partners whispered, You're Sarah Wilson? William, the senior partner, stuttered. But no, that can't be. Wilson Ventures is worth $500 million, more or less, I said, finishing his sentence. Wilson's my mom's last name. If anyone had ever thought to notice. Andrew had turned pale, his face drained of all smugness. All this time, while we assumed you were just managing a tiny business. Yes, I replied simply. That was the idea. And if any of you had bothered to visit my little Cambridge office, you'd have noticed it was just a fad. My father finally found his voice. Why? Why wouldn't you tell us? I looked at him, steady and calm. Would it have mattered? When have you ever believed I was capable of anything beyond a small venture? He glanced down at his phone, where news alerts kept pouring in, my photo and name flashing across the screen. You're one of the country's most prominent venture capitalists. Yes. I nodded. And I did it without leaning on the Mitchell reputation, without your law firm's pull, and certainly without anyone's approval. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. Darling, if we had known what? I asked gently. Would you have treated me any differently? Respected my decisions? Stopped calling my business a phase? The string quartet had stopped mid-song. A hush fell across the dining room. Every eye now rested on our table. My father's carefully curated anniversary dinner had turned into something entirely different. The contracts, Andrew said suddenly, as if trying to piece things together. All those small legal requests Wilson Ventures sent us were intentional, I said smoothly. Just enough work to keep you involved without giving you reason to look deeper. William leaned closer, clearly eager now. Sophia, maybe we could revisit things. We'd be honored to manage your bigger transactions now. No, I said firmly. I keep business separate from family. That boundary was drawn the moment you offered me a junior role and called it charity. My father flinched at the reminder. Sophia, surely we can find a way. What? I said, raising an eyebrow. Rewind time? Pretend you weren't embarrassed by me an hour ago? My phone buzzed again with new alerts. Journalists, investors, colleagues all suddenly reaching out. I ignored them. I don't understand, my mother whispered. Why live in that small apartment? Why drive that modest car? Why hide it? Because I don't need to prove my success with things, I said. That's the difference between us. You chase appearances. I build substance. Andrew pushed back from the table. I need a drink. Sit down, I said coolly. And for once, listen to your little sister. You know, the one you offered career advice to earlier. He hesitated, then dropped back into his chair, face flushed with embarrassment. Tomorrow, I continued, your phones will be ringing nonstop. Clients asking about your TIs to Wilson Ventures. Curious about the Mitchell's brilliant daughter. My father leaned forward. And what should we tell them? I smiled. The truth, that while you built your law firm, your daughter built something bigger, all without your help. I stood up again, dress falling in perfect folds around me. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got a merger to close. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. The dinner was wonderful. Wait, my mother called, reaching for me. Can we talk? As a family? I turned back one last time. We are talking, I said. For the first time in years, you're actually listening. Amazing what $500 million can do, isn't it? As I stepped out of the dining hall, I heard Andrew mutter behind me, Jesus Christ. My sister is Sarah Wilson. My driver was already outside, door open, wearing a subtle grin. Back home, Miss Wilson? Not yet. I glanced at my phone, seeing 47 missed calls mostly from relatives, to the office, the real one. The following morning, I sat in my penthouse suite at Wilson Ventures, watching the financial world react. Our acquisition had pushed the stock up by 15% within the first hour of trading. The intercom buzzed. My assistant's voice came through. Your father is here. Your brother too. And 3 senior partners from Mitchell and Associates. They're in the lobby. I straightened the engraved nameplate on my desk. Sarah Wilson. Let them know I'm in a meeting. They can schedule an appointment like everyone else. And your mother? She's called 6 times, my assistant added. I smiled faintly. Tell her I'm tied up. Running a small business takes a lot of energy, you know. I turned my gaze out the window at the skyline. I had claimed not with legacy or last names, but with vision and quiet determination. My phone buzzed again. A text from Andrew. Can we talk? Please. We didn't know. I typed back exactly. No one did. That was the whole idea. Because sometimes, success isn't about shouting until they listen. It's about building something so massive, so complete, that by the time they open their eyes, it's already too late for them to pretend they supported you all along. And as I sat there, reading headline after headline about the brilliant and elusive Sarah Wilson, I realized something even more satisfying than success itself. Sometimes, the best revenge is staying silent until you no longer have to explain anything.